So at 6:35, we will call this meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to begin with visitor comments. First up is Bill Schindler. I'm sorry.
No microphone? Well, good here. Okay. So it won't.
It won't come through on Zoom or on the YouTube.
Our microphone will pick up.
It will?
We have a microphone here.
Okay.
Great. I'll get that time back. I'll reset it. Thank you. School should be a place of learning and focus, not another battleground in the culture wars. Our community includes people of many different views from all sorts of different backgrounds. Those views should be respected. This district should reaffirm its commitment that administrators and teachers will be politically neutral while acting within the scope of their employment. Let's be clear about how this whole sign discussion started. The original concern was about this sign, not Ms. Bruck's sign. The slogan at top, women's rights are human rights, is a common phrase that expresses support for a woman's right to choose. Wherever you stand on that issue, abortion is undeniably one of the most politically divisive issues of the last half century. Here's a picture of this sign being held up at an anti-Trump political rally by one of our high school teachers. We blocked the faces. This sign is on display in one of our high school classrooms. This is a political sign with a political message endorsed by a teacher during work hours to her students, or obviously a captive audience in front of an authority figure. This is Ms. Bruck's sign, which has begun appearing in our classrooms. You belong, you matter, we are all Southern Lehigh. Who could possibly disagree with these statements? My wife and I certainly don't. These are words of tolerance and compassion, and we should all support them. And I've not heard a single person object to a single word on that sign. But the words aren't the problem, and they never were. Ms. Bruck calls it a DEI sign, which she says what she was inspired to create after hearing criticisms of the DEI initiatives at previous board meetings. That needlessly put the sign in opposition to people who objected in good faith to a DEI program that was based on critical race theory. She then layered in the colors of the LGBTQ pride flag and the transgender flag. In doing so, she took statements everybody could have supported and instead made the sign a statement of support for, among other things, transgender ideology. Many people have reasonable concerns about this topic. Just ask any of Leah Thomas's competitors. This otherwise non-political sign was needlessly turned into a political sign with a political message. And here it is, being held up at a political rally. To fail to see these signs as political and therefore inappropriate for classrooms with captive audiences requires us to deny the evidence of our own eyes and ears. More than anything, frankly, this sign is a missed opportunity to come together. Absent the DEI name and the pride colors, we all could have rallied around these sentiments, and we would have found ourselves happily, finally, on some common ground. Regardless of what any of us may think about any of this stuff, none of it has any place in the classrooms of this district, which should be neutral. Thank you.
Perfectly said. Perfect. Samuel Durham.
Good evening. My name is Samuel Durham. I'm a sophomore at the high school here. I felt compelled to come before you to share with you my experiences my freshman year in 2020. I grew up here in Southern Lehigh and got to know the kids in the district through sports and other community activities. However, I attended a private school through 8th grade. So my freshman year, my first attending year at the school in this district. The fall of 2020 was notable for me because it represented my first year in the district. Of course, it was notable for everyone due to the nation dealing with the COVID-19 and a contentious presidential election. I unashamedly supported President Trump in the 2020 election. I even attended several Trump rallies and bought Trump apparel. I was not particularly vocal about it and didn't condemn those that disagreed with my opinion. but I would occasionally wear my Trump sweatshirt to school or my Keep America Great hat to different events. My experience as a result supporting President Trump was very difficult and unfortunate. I spread around It spread around the student body that I was a racist, which is a lie. There was no effort for inclusion for people like me that didn't share a preferred political view. It hurt me and caused me incredible emotional distress. I dealt with it. I did not even share it with my parents until very recently. Uh, my dad said that he was very proud of me for standing up for my beliefs. As far as I know, he's never shared this with the administration or faculty. I don't blame the teachers for what I endured. However, I will say that the culture established within a school didn't dissuade such accusations against Trump supporters. I've had to listen to teachers say such things as Trump supporters are racist. This is hurtful and creates an environment where bullying of conservatives is certainly not being dissuaded. Of course, as time went by, people saw that I wasn't a racist or a bigot in any way, and eventually those accusations ceased. For that, I'm extremely grateful. I stand to speak tonight on behalf of my fellow classmates and those who will come after me. Keep politics out of the classrooms. Do what you must to protect dissenting student views. I love Southern Lehigh. It isn't easy for me to speak tonight, but I've been taught to stand for what is right, and I believe I am doing that right now. Thank you for listening.
Jacqueline Bossert.
I first want to thank the board members for the opportunity to speak on this issue of signs in classrooms. As a student who sees signs that could be affected by your vote every day, I strongly encourage you to vote no. On my first day of high school, I walked into civics and government class, nervous as to what would happen in the following period. Something that relieved my anxiety was to see pride flags and equality-focused posters adorning the walls. This showed me, a student worried about the potentially controversial environment that waited, that I had a place to freely express my views on these issues, which is the entire purpose of classes such as civics and government. I must also ask the board, how will this policy be enforced when the grounds of political are so wide and subjective? One person's political divisions is another reality. For every person that may feel a slight discomfort, there are so many more that feel included, accepted, and even validated. And even in that discomfort, how will the removal of these decorations help the situation when such topics will continue to be discussed in classrooms? By taking down posters that touch on topics such as race and the LGBTQ+ community, such as the sign that sparked this situation, we deem these topics and even the people that fall into these groups as dirty or something that needs to be kept silent. If we truly want to form a more accepting school environment where students feel like they can speak their minds, censoring real issues is not the solution. Instead, we need to maintain civil discussions, not with the purpose of winning a debate, but by coming to agreements. Every day, my freshman classmates and I do exactly that. We discuss hard issues on how government is run while retaining respect for one another. The removal of these signs sends two messages. One to students who wanted the removal. They see this as a victory that pushes complex issues back instead of facing them head on. You are all elected officials, and I'm sure you're aware of that this is not the way to deal with such controversial issues, because this will only forcefully bring these issues back to light if they are suppressed. This also sends the message to those that related to the poster, those that may have felt comfort in it. The removal tells those individuals that the problems and issues they face are too uncomfortable to handle. Their very existence is labeled as too political. To conclude, in an already divisive environment, it is imperative that we send clear and direct messages to students that not only should they speak up, but they have the responsibility to do so when faced with inequality in the classroom. Thank you.
Michelle through.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I wanted to express my support for the proposed policy entitled Signage and Decoration or some similar policy. Although the messaging seems to be clearly acceptable on these signs, these are indeed political slogans that are commonly used for political campaigning and widely recognized even by our high school students. I questioned my son and he was able to identify these slogans. He knows what they mean and which political party they are associated with. I have sent the board a link to a tank top for sale entitled Liberal Tank Top with the slogans in question written on it. I found a blogger who discusses these slogans so eloquently. He references a yard sign containing some of the same well-known slogans as one of the signs in questions hanging in teachers' classrooms. It says, in this house, but you could say in this classroom, we believe Black Lives Matter, women's rights are human rights, no human is illegal, science is real, and love is love. He says this in part about slogans. Each one has a backstory that it is attempting to summarize and weaponize. That's what political slogans do. They're most effective when they put opponents on the defensive. They are rhetorical moves on the level of, did you beat your wife today? Who is going to deny, strictly speaking, that African Americans' lives are important, that women are human, that to be human should be permitted by governments worldwide, that Bill Nye and Mr. Wizard really did those cool experiments on TV when we were kids, and that tautologies are tautologies. A successful slogan makes its targets appear foolish, deniers of the obvious. How then is a student to feel welcomed walking into that classroom if their beliefs conflict with what is known to be the true meaning of those slogans? And again, the students do know what those true meanings are. What if a student, say, believes that life begins at conception and fights for the life of the unborn child on a regular basis? Would that student feel welcome with the slogan, women's rights are human rights, knowing what that really means? What if you are wearing a rifle team sweatshirt and have identified the teacher as being or supporting the Democratic agenda? How welcome would you feel in that classroom? Classrooms are a unique situation for children because teachers are in charge in the classroom. They are the authority to which a child answers. Political slogans are indeed designed to weaponize. That is why I feel it is important to keep them out of the classroom. If it is felt that a kindness, racial tolerance, or anti-bullying message needs to be spread in the school, I'm sure there are materials designed specifically for the educational environment or anti-bullying programs that can be adopted instead of political slogans, which can be felt as bullying in another form, if you happen to believe in the other side of the political arguments that are being presented. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration in this matter and for bringing the matter to light, even in the toughest of political climates. Thank you.
Christoph Ambrose.
So back in November, I attended my first school board meeting and spoke to the outgoing school board members and some of the current members. At that meeting and the meetings that followed, I spoke to two main points: that our children be children and accountability. Here we are, 4 months later, and it appears that these 2 points have come up for discussion once again. Unfortunately, I feel as if they're probably going to come up in the future too. I don't know how we got to this point where every topic is so divisive. I don't understand how basic logic has escaped our thought process. We used to have common sense, but once history and basic definitions became rewritten, common sense became not so common. Signs with ideological messages are nothing more than classroom decorations. While I take no personal issue with a certain sign that's been making its rounds in local news, I do take issue with the lack of logic that's being applied to this situation. When it comes to the classroom decorations, it is only logical that if a teacher cannot have a sign that says that telling a lie is a sin in the eyes of God, then another teacher cannot have a sign with other ideological messages. This isn't my opinion, this is basic logic. I am probably for more free speech than most people are comfortable with. I believe if you let someone say whatever they want, you'll learn everything you need to know about that person, both good and bad. Our public schools were established to perform a basic task, to give our children the basic tools needed to survive in the workforce. These tools have evolved with the changing market, but modern public schools were never meant to promote certain ideologies while prohibiting others. I think most rational people can agree that we all want from our public schools is to have our children learn the indisputable essentials, interact with other children, and to leave the ideological indoctrination up to the family. It is up to parents to have discussions about race, sex, religion, and politics with our children as they come of age. The opinions of teachers about these matters do not belong in the classroom where children are supposed to be children. They belong in our homes where they can be discussed at an appropriate length with the appropriate language. Like I said in November, I know what's best for my children, and you know what's best for yours. So, because we live in an all or nothing society these days, I guess I must be in favor of the school board creating a policy that holds all teachers to the same standard. If the topic does not pertain to a curriculum or school-sponsored events, it should not be displayed. Those that decide their personal beliefs belong in the minds of our children need to be held accountable. Teachers do have rights as employees, but those rights of employment do not outweigh the parental rights that are attached to the children that sit before them. Thank you.
Kylie Baker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kylie Baker. I'm in 11th grade here, and I've been in this district since 2nd grade. I'm involved in nearly a dozen clubs, performed in a musical and a fall play, competed last year at both the national and state level for our district, and enjoy complaining about our school lunches. So I like to think of just about as Southern Lehigh as it can get. But by passing tonight's policy, my saying that becomes political and divisive, and here's why. The policy proposal tonight states that, quote, any signage interpreted to promote a political party, collective bargaining position, or divisive community topic or be deemed to create a distraction may be removed. Most of these statements are functionally fine and can be found directly in signage, but the statement divisive community topic seems vague to a fault. Previous policies invoked in today's policy, like 918.10, do their job in protecting our students from any messages against their gender, religion, ethnicity, or race, which are specific as said and easy to persecute. But why are we adding these premeditating rules? We have to ask ourselves with this policy, what isn't divisive these days? We can see specific examples such as the debate sparked over the sign that states things like love is love and women's rights are human rights. Anyone could read into these as much as they want and charge them with a political party, but I ask you to tell me how my rights being human rights is controversial and how the way that I love is not love. Ms. Brooks' sign shows trans LGBT students of color that we belong here. But if tonight's policy is passed, inclusive messages like this can be removed from our classrooms on the merit that someone has disagreed with it, which sets a dangerous precedent. Because if you believe that I am a true student of Southern Lehigh because of active participation and work in the district, then that cannot change because I'm an openly LGBT student here. I'm very blessed to be able to say things like this freely at my school and in my community. And I ask you members of the board to uphold that American ideal of being allowed to be honest, whether it's perceivable as divisive or not. Because of those parameters that could be passed tonight, being inclusive to students becomes political and removable in our classrooms. Since the dawn of our history, inclusion has been a divisive ideal, from fighting against segregation to voting rights to citizenship to marriage equality. All it takes is one person to take down a supportive message, but it's all those watching that are truly impacted. Someone's opinion may be violated, but another's entire existence is violated by passing. Please don't politicize our students. Don't and pass tonight's policy. Thank you.
Michelle Stanton.
Hi, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here today because it truly breaks my heart to see how divisive this community has become. I'm asking everyone here to take a deep breath, a step back, and let's find a more constructive way to move forward and show our kids how to work through our differences. I don't proclaim to know how to do this, but I am worried that this policy on signs that is being considered has more potential to divide us than it does to unite us or protect anyone. And when I listen to Sam's experience, that is not right and it is not fair. And I don't have the answers, but I do think that this policy has the potential to open up, again, a lot more division and litigation. And as any taxpayers here, I think the one thing we can all agree on is that we don't want our tax dollars to be fighting lawsuits. This is not a policy that can be fairly and consistently implemented because we all bring our own experiences and our own perspectives to interpreting signs and photographs and decorations. During the 2020 election, many people came to view the American flag as a sign of support for President Trump. Are we going to remove American flags from our classroom? If a teacher is gay and has a photo of their family on their desk, are we going to remove that photo if it makes someone feel uncomfortable? If a teacher is wearing a tie or a cross, are we going to ask them to take that off while they're in the classroom? I think this policy has the potential to go wildly out of hand. I never considered the sign, women's rights are human rights, as being political. And for everybody else, if everybody else and all the kids in high school do, well, then I'm the idiot. But I didn't realize that until people started to mention that. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and have a theory. I like data, okay? That's the field I work in research. I wish we had data. I think if we surveyed the kids in school, most of them would look at that sign on face value. That would be my daughter. Now, I'm not taking that away. There are kids in this school across the political spectrum who completely look at that on a much deeper level. And that would be my son, who graduated in 2019. I pride myself on trying to be moderate. I definitely lean liberal. I'm a registered Democrat. My son and I have completely divergent views. I've heard the terms about kids being indoctrinated in the classroom. My son is a Republican, he's pro-life, he supported Trump. None of the things that I support. Do I blame the school? No. I'm actually glad that he had the opportunity and he had teachers. He was in civics class during the 2016 election. It was a great experience for them to be talking about politics and what was going on. Please, let's not micromanage our teachers. Let's give them the support. I mean, coming off of the past 2 years, I can't even imagine what it's like being a teacher. Let's not make it harder for them, and let's not make students feel unwelcome. If most of the kids are taking that sign at face value, if love is love or being kind is getting across to them, and that makes one student step up and support someone who's being bullied, and that might be someone like Sam who might be bullied. And that might be another student then that steps up and stands up for him. Let's find ways to come together. Let's have some opportunities for some town hall meetings. Let's educate. I would love to hear more about some of the issues that we're facing, these divisive issues. We can all learn. Stuff has come up about what is a woman on social media, I think, is adding to this. We need to be talking face to face. We're not looking at each other as human beings or seeing people as parents who are taking care of sick relatives or people who are working jobs and long hours. And I don't know where my time's so I know.
Well, we don't know where your time is too, but it seems to be getting close.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is a step in the wrong direction. I think they're, you know, again, things like that happened to Sam shouldn't happen. But I also know that my son went through this school and he supported Trump, you know, so I'm not sure what's happening, but thank you for your time.
Can you hear that? Okay. So Dr. Trinkle will give the speaker a 1-minute warning and a 30-second warning, okay? Until we get the clock back. Okay, you have 3 minutes. All right. Nicole Doolin. A 1-minute warning.
Hello, I'm Nicole Dolan, and I'm here to speak about the signage and decoration policy that's on the agenda tonight. At the last meeting, Dr. Mahan mentioned that, as things stand, that the administration doesn't have any guidance on how to make these types of calls. I believe the solicitor also advised that there be minimalist verbiage that gets used. The verbiage that's on the guidelines, which somebody else also read, is signage, photographs, decorations, or other items displayed by an employee, which can be interpreted to promote a political party, collective bargaining position, or divisive community topic, and could be deemed to create a distraction to other employees, students, or visitors in the building, may be removed. I'm not entirely sure I see how that policy is actually giving any of the guidance that was lacking before. It's rather broad and vague, which to me is not the same as minimalist. It opens up huge doors for what is decided to be a divisive topic. Who decides what that is? It still doesn't give that guidance of how you decide what is a divisive topic or which way to go on it. So I don't understand how this policy as it stands adds value as far as guidance goes. I know this is going to be a little bit cheesy, but Mr. Rogers was a minister, a Christian man of faith, and his words have been embraced by people of all walks of life. And I wanted to read some of his. And I realize that you can't put into the policy what would Mr. Rogers do. But if there were a way to do that, I think that would be wonderful. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that's mentionable can be more manageable. When we can all talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us know that we are not alone. For many students, that important person that they trust is a teacher. Everyone longs to be loved, and the greatest thing we can do is to let people know that they are loved and capable of loving. A separate one is, love isn't a state of perfect caring. It's an active noun like struggle. To love someone is to strive to accept that person exactly the way he or she is, right here and now. If there were a way to put into the wording, is it kind or unkind? Is it helpful or hurtful? Is it loving or hateful? I think that would be a more useful way to provide some guidance to what you want to do here. A final quote, we live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It is easy to say, it is not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. These signs and these shirts exist because people saw a need in our community, because there were people in our community being hurt. And so they saw a need and responded. Thank you.
I believe it's Ms. Kimmel.
Everybody, I'm Pa.C.S. So I'm here regarding policy 710.1. And I have basically 3 comments, mostly feedback questions that I have that as you present this policy, hopefully these are some of the things that you can explain to myself and anybody else who is interested. So the first thought is, why is this policy needed? I'm always a fan of less restrictions than more, especially if it has the potential to restrict a person's freedom of expression. Even though I understand that there's more restrictions in a school setting than in a private setting. What are other schools doing? What are other schools in Lehigh County doing? And has the administration looked at existing policies to see if they adequately address some of the concerns that have been raised here tonight concerning political signs? My kids are both in the district. They've been in the district for a long time. And I've never heard of an issue with political signs except for the one that's discussed this evening. So I'd really like to understand what is requiring the specific policy. The next concern I have is with respect to the language itself. And I do have concerns that it has built within it what I call litigation language. There's a lot of ambiguity. The language is so broad that I'm concerned that it's going to regulate content it's not intended to regulate. Where there's ambiguity, lies litigation, and as a taxpayer, I want my taxpayer dollars going to your efforts to improve our schools facilities. I want to see a great music facility here. I don't want us to be spending time chasing down litigation where people are trying to interpret that ambiguity. And you know, look, the specific language that I'm concerned about is can be interpreted to promote divisive community topic, could be deemed to create a distraction, including for visitors. Why are we giving standing to visitors to raise an issue under our policy? And so, for example, you know, it seems to swallow everything. If a mail carrier comes into the building and sees a sign of Martin Luther King with the quote, "I have a dream," and I've seen that sign at political rallies, is that a political sign? That's a historical figure. Does that mean that the visitor has standing to request that the principal remove that sign? I don't think that's what you intend, but the language is so broad. it can swallow content that I don't believe you intend to regulate. And if it's passed, I hope that principals are given some guidance of how to apply it. I don't think the policy should be applied the same in the high school compared to the lower schools. I don't think there should be any political mention in the lower schools, but the high school is a different story. I know you have Republican committees and Democratic committees. My son comes home and talks about the debate he has with his teachers and students all day long. So I hope that's taken into consideration. And finally, my concern is with enforcement. If a teacher refuses to comply, what are the next steps? Are they going to be disciplined? Has this policy been socialized with the union? And finally, are you concerned about this encouraging teachers to retire or discouraging teachers from applying to our school district? We all know that there's a shortage of teachers in the Commonwealth. Thanks for your time.
Christian group.
Hi, for those of you who don't know, I am the one person that made the You Belong sign, and I want to speak to them, but first I want to tell a story. A few years ago, one of my kids came home and told me that their teacher told the class that he thought Trump should build a wall and keep all the immigrants out of this country. I found this teacher's remarks upsetting because this anti-immigrant rhetoric goes against my values. But I didn't call the school and demand the teacher be reprimanded. I didn't ask the school to create a policy to make sure none of the teachers ever say anything that goes against my beliefs. What I did do is sit my kid down and have a conversation. We talked about how we do need immigration reform in this country, but oftentimes, as we see in Ukraine right now, people leave their countries because they have no other choice. And then I personally feel that building a wall is a symbol of hatred and ignorance. Fast forward a few years, and parents are demanding that posters that go against their beliefs must come down. And I have to ask, why? Why can't these parents just have a conversation with their kids about their beliefs? Because let's face it, even if you succeed in phrases like women's rights or human rights are stripped from the building, your kids have phones. They have access to the internet. They're going to see these things. I mean, just take a look through the students' avatars in Google Classroom, and you can see that they have access to everything, including politically charged content. And it's our job as parents to discuss difficult topics with our children, even those we don't like. And I keep hearing that parents have the right to dictate what their child learns in school. And I have to say that simply isn't true. Parents have a right to choose what school their child attends, sure, but they don't have a say in the curriculum, and they shouldn't. I want trained educators making these decisions. Southern Lehigh is a public school. If you are unhappy with a public school promoting inclusivity, then I think what you actually want is a private school that doesn't. And you have that right. You don't have the right to insist that anything that goes against your beliefs be stripped from all of the kids' education. So that brings me to the You Belong sign I made. I truly did not mean for it to be divisive. It was meant to be a yard sign that showed kids a message of kindness, as I explained at the last board meeting. And I keep hearing that no one had an issue with my sign, but clearly they do. And an administrator did indeed tell the teachers to take the sign down less than a day after it was put up in just 3 classrooms, which means clearly someone who knew it was in the building had a problem with it. Otherwise, I find it hard to believe an administrator would do that. So it seems the signs are not the problem at all. The problem is parents who continue to insist that public education be sterilized. And who is hurt by all of this? Our kids.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mahan, and any board members who replied to my email that I sent to the board, even if it was just to acknowledge that you received it. I think people agree that there needs to be some guidance and guardrails for a captive audience for free speech. When I saw this proposal, I wondered what else is out there similar to this policy. So I looked at all the Lehigh County schools, except one I couldn't open. And then just to say that we weren't in a bubble, I looked at some big schools, Easton, Reading, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. I wanted to know what they do because I thought I heard somebody say, we need this. So how many of them have a 906 complaint language similar to ours? All of them. That's the way they handle it. How many determined it was vital to focus on signage with a policy? None. We did. They follow law. They follow complaint process. They follow administrative prerogative. None have elevated signage to the level we are choosing to focus our attention on tonight. They may have some valid and legitimate concerns about signs. I get that. But it ultimately circles back to a judgment call from an administrator. I'm worried about if this proposal goes through, common area classroom, or is it all in or all school property? If it's school property, that might include the parking lot. And I wonder if a teacher has a bumper sticker for a candidate, does that count? And that might sound silly, but it's been discussed in other signage discussions in other districts. I worry about divisive and distraction. When does a complaint from one turn into a divisive topic? Is that one parent? Two, an email mobilization campaign to make it divisive? Recently, I saw flags being talked about. I saw them at political rallies. I saw what is a girl being discussed. I worry about inconsistency with policy 918 on ads. Both ads and signs might be seen by students in a school, but one has a level of interruption of operations as a standard. I worry about clubs and activities. They are extracurricular outside of adopted curriculum.
30 seconds.
Could a teacher hang a sign up for the Gay Straight Alliance, the High School Democrats, the Young Conservatives, all of which I think are clubs here? Could a teacher hang up a sign if our school musical was Rent that has a transgender character? Certainly a disruptive, divisive topic. Some here have spoken passionately about limited government and less regulation. I believe that this adds unnecessary language that no other district has said they need. Thank you.
Ronnie Arena?
Good evening. My name is Ronnie Arena. I've been a resident since the 80s. I'm the mother of 3 graduates of Southern Lehigh. I was a public school teacher for 37 and a half years. And school is a place where I was raised. It's like a second home. It's a beloved spot to me with a beloved community. So over the past few weeks, with all this to do about the sign, I've gone to visit some people, and people in my family have been, to talk to members of the community about the signs and their kids' experiences in Southern Lehigh. And I'll tell you what, I was embarrassed. And these are families with children of color and families with white children. People that have children of color have been harassed, have been abused, have made to feel uncomfortable in this setting. I even talked to my primary physician who said, when I have new patients who consider moving into this district, and I ask them, do you have children? And then they say yes, I tell them, don't move into this district. Your children will have problems. I recently talked to a neighbor of mine, 3 white children. His kids came home using the N-word. They don't use the N-word in his house. His children, this is at the high school, have told him that they learn it here, that it gets unaddressed by teachers and it's common here. He pulled his kids out. They're now going to a private school. My question is, what kind of community do we want to build? Do we want to build a community where people don't feel comfortable bringing their children into our schools? Does that say a lot for business? Think about what the Morning Call said today and all those articles about the signs. People think we're crazy. They think we don't care about bringing other people in. They think we don't care about building a beloved community. That embarrasses the hell out of me. And it makes me feel disgust as a teacher because I wanted my children to feel the way I felt as a teacher. These are my children. I want them in a setting where they are all valued, regardless of anything about them. They are all valued. Thank you.
Adele?
You need to set that timer for me, because I like to talk. So, so I stood up here in 2016 and I lost my cookies, because my black son was being called the N-word. And I was quoted in the morning call, you can look my name up, I just did to remind myself when that was. And I am so sorry that you were harassed wearing a Trump shirt. I am, truly, because my son was harassed for being black after Trump, and white supremacists were saying white power to his face and calling him the N-word after the election. Both are completely wrong, absolutely 100% wrong. So I'm assuming our issue is with the rainbow. That's what I hear, because if it's with the skin tones, we need to call the Department of Justice again, because they were in here in 2016. Yeah, you don't want me here for that. What I want to say is I used to be a public school teacher in Chicago. Actually, I was a private school teacher. And I was trained by the Chicago Police Department on gang signs. I was the art teacher. So I had to be the person that monitored the gang language in the school. And we had gang members in the school. We had fathers that came in that were gang members with gang tattoos. So we had to be really careful because this signage was literally deadly. It was literally deadly. But do we have a policy? No. We took it one-on-one and we said, hey, dude, this signage, you're dissing another gang. We cannot hang that up. Somebody could get hurt because of this. Kids had tags on them. They were afraid to walk home from school. That's a problem. This, not so much. What I want to say is my 12-year-old is now in 7th grade. In 3rd grade, he walked into the boys' room and a person came in with long hair that appeared to him, this 3rd grader, to be a girl. He was confused.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So he said, you're in the wrong room. Came home, talked about it. We had a discussion. That's what we do in our house. My son's name is Brandon. You do the math on that. That's all I'm going to say. We talk about it. We don't put down presidents. We don't put down presidential offices in our house. I also know of somebody who had a kid that went here 20 years ago. And I've heard the same thing. People are like, oh, you go to Southern Lehigh. Let me tell you my story. Let me tell you my story. Let me tell you my story. Her daughter then, who's transgender, is now identified as a man, had left here, went to Philly. Man got out of here because he was terrified to be here. So the last thing I want to say is, it wasn't that long ago when my son, my black son, was considered a brain that wasn't as developed as a white brain. It was not that long ago. So I think we need to be really careful about what we're doing these days. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Just reporting out that there was an executive session this evening before the start of the meeting, and we covered several litigation and personnel matters.
Okay, can I have a motion for the approval of the board minutes of February 28th, the workshop minutes of February 28th, and the workshop minutes of March 14th? Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Mann?
Thank you. Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge all those who will be celebrating Ramadan, which begins on April 1st. We have a number of students and staff and members of our community who will be doing so, and we want to wish them the very best during this very holy and sacred time. Regarding construction, the facility committee met. We continue to have discussions regarding the spec bid build model. This afternoon, I had a phone call with representatives of Field Turf, and they are a performance contractor, so we'll be reporting back to the committee. So we remain on track. We also have Mr. Pepe overseeing planning for major maintenance on our buildings regarding roofs and HVAC. We've had a number of members of our committee visit buildings. I want to recognize Mr. Mon for going out and touring the building. So while we do have a number of challenges before us, I think we're making very good progress with respect to construction. And now I know there's likely to be some construction, but under Superintendent's report for first reading, I put forth consideration for policy 710 signage and decoration for the board to consider and discuss.
I mean, is this gonna work today, you think? Okay, good. I guess my first question would be why now? You know, I've heard some, I guess, comments from the community with respect to what the context was for bringing this up. I think, you know, at the prior meeting, we did make comments, a few of us did, that in the past, we have trusted our teachers and administrators to do the right thing. And we already have a process in place with respect to complaints that leave decisions to the discretion of administrators, such as building principals and the superintendent. That's one question I have as to why, you know, how rampant was this situation? How many complaints were there? What really led to, I guess, this, especially since we clearly stand alone with doing a policy of this nature?
Well, I will offer thoughts. First, I will say that it is very easy for administration to simply handle this, all right? And to go around and say, look, we have a concern about, and an ideal, under the ideal circumstances, and I've kind of put this forth in talking to some of our administrators. I have a meeting with the principals to get their insight tomorrow. But ideally, we'd like to say to teachers, decorate the room as you'd like, all right? But do it thoughtfully. And to the extent that there are problems, we will sit and talk about it. I think one of our speakers said, hey, dude, was the way she described, like to sit down and have a conversation, right? And what I will say is I walk around to the classroom. There is not, it's not a pervasive issue, but in honestly, if you look through the district, there are some signs that I would say should not be up on the walls, right? And I'm not actually talking about the one that's seen tonight, but as you go through, there are some signs that should not be there. Now, it is fair to ask, well, why don't you just go handle those? It's a good question, right? And I think that, you know, one of the reasons that I raise this issue is because it is no small thing to have a sign taken from a wall, right? And even if the outcome of taking is no policy tonight, I think the fact that we had some very thoughtful people who describe both sides of the multifaceted aspects of this was actually really good tonight. And I think it also speaks to the importance of transparency, right? Because again, the fact that people are here tonight talking about this as a community and the board is reflecting on it, I think makes us doing the way we're doing it better than the districts up on the board, who surely have these issues and these challenges, and who surely are not doing it in a way that is as transparent as the Southern Lehigh School Board is choosing to do it tonight. So I see great value in that. And so I would like to draw a distinction between what employees can or cannot or should or should not do and students, okay? Because we must do everything possible to not only encourage but amplify student voice, right? And if students wish to be political or provocative, only with the most extreme limits put on their conduct, we need to have opportunities for that to occur. The concern is that of adults, all right, who have a captive audience before them. All right, and what we are not saying, all right, is that we should not have welcoming, inclusive, encouraging messages coming in the form of decorations in our classroom. I think that the conversation for a potentially objectionable sign is, what is it that you're trying to communicate in this sign? All right. Are you trying to communicate welcome and connection and inclusion? And can we accomplish that in a way that doesn't have whatever it is that is objectionable in that sign? And I would say yes, right? We can have all of the messages that our speakers tonight are so correctly wanting to see, but done in ways, all right, that cast light and not necessarily heat. And I think that's a fair way to look at it and say, what is the message? How can we incorporate it into the conduct of our lives, in the fabric of our school, to allow teachers to have their own aesthetic in their classroom, but to do it in a way that does not cast heat. All right, and again, I'm confident that we can do that. I'm also confident there are some signs that are intended to cast both light and heat, and I think that they can be recalibrated in ways that amplify the light and limit the heat. And so, again, I don't have a great, sense that this must be approved, because what would be concerning to me is if we say we have no limitation on signs. All right, that is, and I don't think anyone is really suggesting that at all. But I do think that why now is because the issue is here, right? And issues in this district, and this is a powerful place. It's an amazing community, but we're really good at percolating these issues here. And yeah.
So I guess my question is,
Yeah.
how did it become an issue, right? Was it a few families, a single individual?
Well, no,
I mean, because I think it's a valid question, because
Yeah.
one, I mean, the language divisive community, what was it?
Right.
Topic.
Right.
The readers. Who decides what's divisive?
Right.
I mean, couldn't anything theoretically be divisive? I mean, I could.
Right.
I mean, it's a slippery slope.
Sure,
right?
it is. It is. And so let me say, one of the reasons that this is coming forward is because of the superintendent. And we haven't really hit this, but the issue that does concern me, and I've said this last week, I'm going to say it again, putting content aside, I am concerned if suddenly we see 5, 10, 15, or 20 signs in a school that are the same, that are not related to a district initiative. And we're left to say, wait, what does this mean? What, and because as someone who's walking through the school, as a parent, all right, a visitor, whatever, would look to say, that looks like a district-sponsored initiative. Now, we have a district-sponsored initiative in No Place for Hate at the high school. I would love to see 1,000 signs in every door, because that is something the board approved. It's been administered very capably by building administration. It's the right message to send. And when we see those signs all over the place, then that's fun. That's great. But when we start to see signs emerge that are coming from individuals or organizations that are not us in a way that is organized, that is a source of concern for me, because the most partisan, politically divisive issue can be framed in the most innocuous language. And oftentimes that is the point. I spoke to a wise person earlier today who put forth the example, no child left behind, right? Whoever could disagree with no child left behind, all right? But certainly, there are challenges with no child. It's innocuous as it would appear on its face, although it did some good work. It's a complex issue, all right? And so finally, All right. So that was an emerging issue that I think forced us to at least call or raise the question. And finally, right, I think just generally, this is my own speaking, not just my view, right? We have to watch out for sloganeering, right? And because, putting up a bunch of signs that say a lot of different things that have different meanings really can devalue the ultimate purpose, which is for people to feel really good about their learning environment. And so, that, Dr. I don't know if that answers your question or even comes close to it, but maybe gives a little context as to why we're here and how, from an administrative point of view, we might want to approach this.
Go ahead.
Had a quick question. Who had input into the development of this policy?
The bulk of it just comes from PSBA. PSBA does this. It is and our assistant, Ms. Matane, has tweaked it a bit, but I'll certainly leave it to her.
So where did the extra language come from? Because I saw a very, I too was looking up what local schools and if anybody else had a similar policy, and I did find one that had they were very, very close. You could tell they were mirrored off of the same, probably PSBA policy, but we had a lot of extra wording in ours that wasn't in theirs, and I'm wondering where all that came from.
Well, one of the pieces that was, I think, critical to me in terms of avoiding litigation is to make it very, is to make it very clear that this was a policy that would apply to employees and not to students, because the differences between an employee's right to have communications and student-free speech, the legal standards are just completely different.
Right, but what about, I'm more specifically, I mean, the whole paragraph about the divisive community topics, that whole paragraph, I didn't see that anywhere else. That was just ours, and I was wondering where that paragraph came from.
That paragraph came from me. It was an attempt to limit the kinds of things that you might actually might create a community disturbance. And I realize that it's vague. It was intended to be vague. The idea of this policy is really to allow the board to endorse the administrators and who gets to make the call. Well, this policy makes it very clear who gets to make the call: a building administrator and ultimately the superintendent. And that's it. That's where it stops. That provides the clarity, I think, not in terms of content. So yes, it is discretionary on the part of effectively 2 layers of administrators, and that's it. But this allows the board to support its administration if you were to pass this policy in saying, this is how we want this handled when there are issues. We don't want to have every sign become a whole, board meeting agenda, because it will be a different sign next month. It will be, something else. And then we'll be having the same conversations. Is this political? Is this just a very nice uplifting sign? You can do this over and over and over again. This policy allows the board to say, administration, you take care of it. This is how you should do it. And these are the things that we find acceptable to limit. So that would be the collective bargaining, overtly political parties. And again, only by employees on school walls.
What about the distraction to visitors? Isn't that also really vague? I mean, I understand you're trying to not codify it too much, but is it the opposite a little bit too?
Well,
really
yes.
a distraction's pretty.
It is, I agree.
And visitors? I mean,
it's
what
very
visitor is
broad,
deemed,
right.
I guess, important enough to.
Well, and again, it comes down to the delegation of responsibility section.
Mm-hmm.
If it becomes an issue for that building administrator, they have the authority and the right to take action.
So how is, just so I understand, I mean, how is this different, or why can't our existing policy for complaints, like the mechanism that we described at the last meeting, why does that not apply? It has been applied, I would imagine, already in these instances, has it not? Or
I think it's 908 or 906, and the final arbiter is the board in that policy. And so there was some thought that that might not be the appropriate venue for final decision-making on the sign issue. And the, the policy is so very broad, right? I mean, administration has, absent the board restricting administrative prerogatives, school districts have a lot of standing when it comes to regulating what goes on walls. And so, I mean, if left to the administration, we would endeavor to try to do it. But again, and we could have said under policy 906, take that sign down. But that is so contrary to our preferred approach that we thought that we really could have, because we have commerce restrictions on commercial, right? And it really cuts it out because commerce is a little different than what you typically see in that policy. So there's some guidance on trying to avoid commercial activities, but allowing some. And so the thought was that this might, because it's so specific and so, as I used the word last time, so fraught, that the board should weigh in on this particular issue if it chose to do so. And if it just chooses to table it and say, go handle it, then that's a very valid approach too.
I mean, I understand why the timing is now, but I also think you need to understand that by bringing it up now, it makes it seem as if there's certain signs in particular that need to come down.
There are.
Right.
And I will tell you, there are. But not many. It's not pervasive. And those signs have been there before.
Right.
And perhaps just not even noticed as people are walking by.
So, I mean, I guess what I would ask is that, you know, we just came out of 2 years of pretty heightened community divisiveness because of COVID. I'm really excited that we're finally moving past that. And I think at the last meeting, it was great that we heard about what we're doing to get back to work, with respect to what we need to do in terms of education. We highlighted certain drops in scores. Obviously they may be attributed to participation, what have you, but there are trends that are being observed. We have a significant need with respect to facilities. We need to come up with a comprehensive plan. I just feel like there's a lot of things that require a lot of resources, and including time, right? Time is a resource to be utilized by the board as well as administrators and teachers. And it's a distraction, I feel, from what we need to be doing right now in particular.
I agree. I'm certainly not disagreeing with a single word. But part of this was, if you remember, when a single complaint came up, I said, well, let's handle it over the summer. That really was the approach. And then there was a response, and the fuse occurred on a wall, and there were some things back and forth. So this issue emerged. It really did.
It's just our reputation right now.
And I know.
Yes. And it matters. There's
it does.
Recruitment with respect to families to the district. It kind of resurfaces, it cuts up old wounds, clearly given visitor comments. I've already heard teachers are feeling intimidated, and it doesn't make for a good work environment, especially given what they've been through. And you want to be able to continue recruiting good teachers to the district. So I understand what you're saying. I do. I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
I don't like the timing either. I don't. I agree with you.
Going back to your comment about many copies of the same sign appearing in classrooms and on walls, that would be problematic. And I don't believe that has happened, many copies of one sign appearing on classroom walls, but that would be a concern if it has, that's your concern? Okay. So I would offer that if many copies of the same sign appear in classrooms and on walls, I'd conclude the problem isn't the sign, but it's a symptom of a problem we have, a bigger problem we have. So I'd like to refocus in that way, looking at this. And also, specifically, with last meeting, what was brought up, if this issue is that You Belong, You Matter sign originates from outside school-approved materials, you mentioned the No Place for Hate is adopted by the school, but that is outside of school materials, then I think another question we should be asking ourselves is, why do do teachers feel compelled to pull from outside sources? And if this is a message that is adequately represented in our classrooms and in our hallways, then why the need to outsource this? But then it was said here tonight, and I have heard a teacher was asked by administration or administrator to take down that you belong, you matter sign. Is that correct?
I don't believe so, no. I don't, I think that, that the statement that administration asks a teacher to take down a sign is not accurate.
You believe it's not
I do,
accurate?
I believe that to be not accurate.
Okay. That I'm trying to listen with 2 ears. I know this is a business meeting, so I'm going to focus on this side of the table.
And again, yes, there was discussion of signs with individual teachers, but it was not a matter of because I could not bring myself to take down, that's just not a small thing. But concerns were expressed about the idea of signs appearing on walls. But it's my understanding that no teacher was told to take down a sign.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And if that sign went up tomorrow, I am not, what's that? Okay, and that's not, and I'm not saying that you weren't, but I'm saying from my perspective and my understanding, you were not told.
Okay, so that we obviously have a disconnect here because you're saying an administrator did not ask, and a teacher in the audience is saying that an administrator did ask her to take
That's
it
an
down.
important disparity that we'll have to find out what actually occurred.
Yeah, I think that would be a good first step. So as a result of this sign, as we addressed last meeting, as a result of this sign, we have a policy here on our agenda tonight restricting signs as a result of that "You Belong, You Matter" sign. And I'm glad we're gonna have a conversation to figure this out. But I start to, given this conflict and this discrepancy, I start to understand the need perhaps.
I don't think the statement you just made is accurate.
What's that?
I think the superintendent indicated that there was a discussion about another sign that started the issue.
But at the last meeting where we discussed whether or not this would go on the agenda, it was specifically addressed that yes, this originated with another sign earlier in the fall. However, this policy then was brought to us now, and I think Dr. Mahan even said his initial reaction was, let's let this go right now. Let's not deal with it at the moment. Let's wait till the summer. But because that was then revisited, and I think you just said tonight, sorry, if I touch my cord, this goes in and out. You just said here tonight that the appearance of the "You Belong, You Matter" sign is what put it on tonight's agenda. It made it an occurrence that is why we are here. Yes, there was another sign originally that brought it to the attention, but it was to focus. But where I'm going with this is, if this sign appeared prolifically throughout classrooms, regardless of what the sign is, if a sign appears prolifically throughout classrooms, that would mean that many teachers thought that this sign was appropriate, or whatever sign it was appropriate. So then, is this a policy saying that we don't trust the majority of our teachers to continue to make good decisions as they've been doing for decades without this policy? I mean, right now, teachers are bone tired, and they're trying to help our kids, but they're caught in this political and cultural crossfire that is not of their making. And I keep hearing people say, of course we trust our teachers' professional judgment. Then why not demonstrate it in this particular moment? And of course, parents should have input into the classrooms and learning environments of their children, of course. But I have faith that we are not so far beyond the pale that parents and administrators and teachers can have conversations to increase understanding and collaboration about these issues, something that I think tonight has demonstrated is obviously lacking. And that's all I would maintain about the aspect of this, of multiple signs appearing in multiple classrooms. I see this as not being the best answer for our community at this time with regard to that particular need.
I think this is on. So we do have a policy that's going back to 2014 about current events that we've had in place for years and having discussion around current events. And what I heard from many of the community members that spoke tonight and some of the students that spoke is the discussion that a sign should bring to an educational format, such as a school, the discussion that should be taking place, pro and con, about what is on that sign. And without that discussion, I question what validity the educational purpose of that sign would be. So if the sign is there as part of the curriculum, as part of a discussion of current events, and to learn from it, that's great. And
Which
that's what
sign-
we should be happy.
Just for clarification, Mr. Lysette, which sign are you speaking about?
Any sign.
Okay.
I don't care why the sign is there. I don't care if it's there. I care what is the educational purpose and what discussions to learn on both sides of the issue, if it's issue related, is taking place. The ultimate outcome is everyone's opinion. Everyone as a human being should matter and everyone should be respected. But if there is a sign, a discussion that someone walks away from that experience not feeling valued, that's more of a concern to me than a sign and it being there. People should not be put off because of someone else's feelings in a public school or in any place for that matter. And unfortunately, what I keep hearing on both sides is it's creating issues that people are not feeling welcome, regardless of where they stand on that particular issue, that event that's taking place. And that's not good. I don't want a policy on signs. I really don't. I don't want to be policing signs. And I want to trust that both the students and the teachers can have a thoughtful discussion, not a yelling match at each other like we've seen over the years recently and even going back decades. And what we're seeing nationally, I'd hope that Southern Lehigh and an educational system could do what it's supposed to do, where there's healthy discussion, debate, and while you may agree to disagree, that's okay. You don't have to convince the other party. You don't have to yell at the other party to be heard, but have a discussion and learn from it. It may take time for people to come to a common ground, but I'm kind of torn with where we are, given some of the policies that we have and given maybe a little bit of liberty that shouldn't be there, because I do have concerns that that discussion that I'm speaking to is not always taking place. And I know it's on both sides. Certainly, I can envision somebody that's a Trump supporter being talked at and spoken to in a way that's not desirable. And conversely, someone that is advocating for gay rights, I can see them not being spoken to the way in which I would like them to be spoken to and feel valued. And it goes both ways. And it's not something that personally, as a board member, I feel I can solve. It's something that the community, the parents, the teachers, and the students have to decide, am I going to treat somebody with mutual respect or not? And that's really what it comes down to. And a policy is not going to fix that.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, and I think that the good thing about even us having this on the agenda and bringing it forth now and involving the community as we did is it's probably forcing the issue and that people recognize that it is happening on both sides, right? And I do think it's important to trigger such conversations for our students and our community members alike, really, because these students, we're hoping to create adults, right, that are going to engage in the world, that will be apart from their parents and their homes, right? We have to create adults that are going to be able to fend for themselves in college, where you won't have as much control over what happens. And I do think it's important for differences of an opinion to be voiced at schools. Sometimes you get to hear different things than what you might hear in your own home. And there's value to that, right? You don't want all the exposure maybe to happen when you go away to college, if you do go away. So I just don't want to be the one making the call.
No, I agree that I said at the last meeting, I don't think a policy is necessary. And I still don't think a policy is necessary. I have learned about additional signs in the interim 2 weeks since our last meeting. That to your point, Dr. Mahan, I think there are signs in this building that bring more heat than light, and there is the capacity to develop signs that bring light, that make everyone feel welcome. And I'd be more, to your point, Dr. Mahan, we have no place for hate. That's endorsed by the district, and it can be placed anywhere in any building, however much you want. And I would say to Ms. Gaiman's concern that the teachers feel that they need some additional signage. If that's the case, I would suspect we could create a committee where we could create our own sign for Southern Lehigh that's endorsed by this district, that makes people feel good with a lot of light, to your point, Dr. Mahan. At the same time, I think everybody sitting around here knows, as I said at the last meeting, just like obscenity, you know a political message when you see it. And I think some of these signs that we've discussed are political, and they're meant to be political. And in some cases, they are in classrooms with curriculum that have nothing to do with current events or political science. And therefore, people in those classrooms subject to that political speech, those students have, I heard earlier, will go to a private school. Well, I don't know where all you guys work. I don't have the funds to send my daughter to a private school, nor should I have to, because the public schools of this country are just that, public. And they don't take sides in debates, nor do teachers. And so I think we all know when we see it. And I suspect this administration, and Dr. Mahan, I thought your comments here tonight reinforced my view that you're an adult in the room, that you understand this, and that you will find ways to bring this district together while also ensuring that everyone in every classroom does not feel that their teacher has some view on some political matter different than theirs that makes them feel uncomfortable while they sit in calculus or whatever it is they're sitting in. And I suspect we can do that without a policy, because I don't know what that policy would say either. And I'm an attorney. And I don't think, and I'm not a good one, but I don't suspect I could craft one to do it. And so I agree with everybody that's spoken here tonight on that issue. And I agree that everyone needs to feel welcome. And I think we can find better ways in this district. Clearly, we're lacking in that regard. We've heard that on more than one occasion. And I think we can be creative in that regard. But I don't think it means that every teacher continues to get every sign they want to say their political piece. Because it does seem to go mainly in one direction, from what I've heard. I haven't seen an orange head Trump, swoosh or something that's been displayed and people complain about it. And I haven't heard a pro-life statement that's up. I haven't heard any of that from anyone. The statements that have been raised and the signs that I've seen have seemed to lean in one direction.
So you're saying that, I
I'm not
just want to,
done speaking.
no, you're not, but you asked me a question.
And-
I would ask that I could
Please
ask you a
let-
question.
Please let Mr.
Dimick,
Dimick finish speaking.
I will,
Thank
but
you.
Mr. Dimick asked me a question in the middle of mine, and I would
No, I-
just like to ask him a question as well. You asked me to clarify about what I was talking about. I'm going to do the same. When you say it's in one direction, which direction? And when you say it's about, you mentioned pro-life, are you maintaining that women's rights are human rights, a phrase that has been mentioned tonight, is indeed a reference to abortion? And which direction are you talking about?
I'm speaking about a speaker who's in the community tonight that spoke here tonight, and I believe made that reference, that person felt that is what was meant by that. And that is the problem when you have political speech in the classroom where any student, we heard from one this evening, can sit there and look at that. And again, If you're in political science, maybe that may or may not be appropriate, but if you're in a calculus class and you have a number of statements, many of which could be interpreted to be a political statement about one of the hottest topics of all times, I think we can all agree it could be interpreted that way. I'm not saying how I interpret it. I'm saying I'm hearing from the community. We've heard it in executive session, and we've heard it here tonight that people are seeing it that way. And why have that sign in a calculus classroom or whatever subject that's causing concern for a student in that? What does that have to do with calculus? So why does it need to be there? It's bringing more heat than it's bringing light. Have a welcoming sign for all people of all faiths. That might be more appropriate. That's my point. And I don't think we can write a policy that says that, but I think, as I've said 100 times now, people know it when they see it. I want our students to sit in a classroom and feel welcome and valued, regardless of their gender, regardless of their faith, or any other topic. They should sit there and feel good and welcomed. And if a teacher is perceived to be providing a political statement, I think that's problematic. And I also think we can find creative ways in this district to ensure our teachers are empowered to make everyone feel welcome. We can develop signs that do that. We can have Anti-Defamation League have no place for hate that does that. But when they get to do it on their own, then I think it becomes subject to the issues that we're hearing here tonight. And it brings divisiveness into our community. I agree with Dr. Serene that it's been a rough enough 2 years between the virus and the election and the local school board election. I would like to speak about other things. And I think all of us here can all agree on that. And I honestly believe that together we can find acceptable messages that don't alienate, that don't bring heat, but bring light and make everyone feel welcome. There's a way. No place for hate is a great example of that. I'm unaware of anybody that's got a problem with that statement. And I think we can find additional signage in this district, specific to this district, that will achieve that as well. And I think it would be a welcome development if we can, but I don't think we need a policy to do it. And I've heard myself speak long enough, but I do appreciate your comments on it, Dr. Mann. And I do think it's something that this administration can help tackle. And I don't think we need an additional policy for it. I would encourage you to look at perhaps having a district-sponsored sign that makes, and maybe we can't achieve it. In today's environment, maybe we can. That's kind of sad. But my hope is let's put our heads together and see if there's a sign that we could have 20 of them right behind where we're sitting up here. One Southern Lehigh. I think would be I think that'd be a good thing for us. Thank you.
Jeff, I thought that was Mr. Dimick. Interesting comments. I just wanted to talk about, you talked about bringing light. I took some tours over the past couple of weeks in the school, and this was already simmering, but it was not for this subject matter. It was for facilities, of which we have dire needs to move forward on and come to some agreements. But, I just went to the restroom not long ago, as you saw me get up, and I remember on my tour of this building, inspirational signs that this high school administration, I'm assuming, put up in the hallways. And it was one thing I really noticed as I was walking through this facility that was impressive. And talking to your point about being able to craft a message in a way that is bringing light instead of the opposite of that. I just took a couple of shots. I intended to actually take a litany of shots before this meeting in anticipation, but I just took a couple now. One of which, have courage, be kind. seize the day and the Latin term of that. Here's a poster. You aren't alone. There's another one. A dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken into steps becomes a plan. A plan backed by action makes your dreams reality. I have one more here. Success, the achievement of something desired, planned, or attempted. Now, I would say that one thing about all these signs that's interesting is they're in various fonts, various colors, they're individual messages, and they stand on their own as a positive reinforcement to what I think we should be doing in the educational system. So the question is, how does that differ? And to your point, there's a certain level of common sense that happens with respect to crafting and wording and messages. And many messages stand on their own. But in the all-encompassing form, sometimes that positive message can get lost. And it may be unintended. Sometimes these things happen and they're taken the wrong way. I don't propose that it was or was not crafted for any way whatsoever, but I just, first of all, want to commend the school district for those messages because I think they're great. And as you're walking down the hallway and you look up, instead of an empty cinder block, you see a nicely done logo, or not a logo, but a message that inspires. And they're all over this building, by the way. They're not just, I saw probably 4 of them by the time I went to the restroom. There are probably, I don't know, Mrs. Garriello may know, but there are probably a couple of dozen or more of them in here.
I think she painted them, but.
Yeah, or
To her
stenciled.
great credit. And yes, she did. Not to interrupt, but I thought that was worth noting.
So you talked about bringing light, and I wanted to bring those up because we don't want to lose what we're here for and what we need to do and what we need to accomplish for students in this school district. And, all the other things are interesting comments. I just wanted to bring that up, and I think that's all I have to say at the moment. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to say that Jeff, I really very much agree with you. And I think just to summarize your statements, for what I got from that was political neutrality. We want our classrooms to be politically neutral. And I'm not sure that this current policy is perhaps comprehensive enough, but I also think that the sign issue can be handled through existing policies. But I think what I would like to see is politically neutral classrooms. That's all.
Just one question to Dr. Mann and Dr. Trinkle. I just don't know enough about where certain signs are. Are they in the political science classrooms? Because of course, those things may be deemed acceptable, but I just don't know where they are.
Right. No, I think anytime we would be looking at a sign or signs, we would have to look at context. And certainly a sign that is put up in the form of, in order to, I think one of our board members said about to elicit comment or to address an issue, or if there were like companion posters, like I would say, something with fracking versus something with drilling, right? And they were up there to kind of elicit or enhance a conversation or analysis environment. That would be really great. All right. So I think that the context would be important for us to consider, along with many other factors in looking at a sign.
Our current policies read then, if there was anyone that, if a teacher was told to take down a sign and they appealed it, it would come then to the board, correct?
I think that's how it would work. Yes.
I like Mr. Mun's mention of the quotes in the hallway. I also took note of those quotes. I think you mentioned most of the ones I saw coming in. There was one that is perhaps the closest to this room that's on the wall. And that is, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. I think that's an important quote too. A welcoming sign for all people. Mr. Dimick, I agree. I think when we're creating that sign, if we're creating those signs in our schools, we need to consider the idea that the perspectives and frame of reference, we need to consider the perspectives and frame of reference of the people who, not in this building, but outside of this building, wrote the curriculum, who wrote the books, who created the classrooms, who created that classroom dynamic that we are now working within today. Who are the people who were in the seats of power to create the environment in which our kids exist every day? And I think we need to look at what is welcoming in that context and who is already pervasively represented, so much so that, like, I grew up in barns. When you've been in a barn a really long time, you tend to not notice things as much as people who don't grow up in barns, smelling the smells and seeing the sights. And so I think we also need to consider who created this curriculum, who wrote this, and who perhaps has been in that barn so long that they can't see or smell what everyone else does when they walk in with a different perspective, who was not raised in a barn, as it were. Haha. But I think we heard parents tonight say that their initial reactions to seeing certain phrases were not the same and were not consistent. I'm one of those people who did not share the sentiment when I read a phrase that says woman's rights are human rights. I did not initially think along the same lines of that applies to choice and a woman's right to choose. I think of it as representing in the news lately, the Equal Rights Amendment. I think of it as representing the fact that women couldn't even, as late as the 1970s, couldn't have credit cards without their husband's permission. I think of that. I think of the phrase, women's rights are human rights, that can be dated back to the 1940s when a woman, Pa.C.S. Murray, who was a Black LGBTQ woman and a lawyer, used it to argue about human trafficking and the abuse and torture of women as being included in war crimes because they were not included in war crimes as men were. I think of many different things, and part of the reason why I'm mentioning these and what I think of is because when we say that phrase is just about one thing, I think we need to consider many different perspectives. And to say that is, for instance, that particular phrase is just about a woman's right to choose, is to ignore people like Pa.C.S. Murray, who in our history are indeed underrepresented. And perhaps if we look at these phrases and have them in classrooms where, if it is a woman teaching, perhaps she lived through a time where she couldn't have a credit card or she couldn't cash her paycheck as a teacher in that classroom without her husband's permission and bank account. So there are many, many different layers. And what I like about tonight is that there were many conversations and thought-provoking revelations that we can all benefit from as we consider these things and move forward. But I do think that first and foremost, we need to consider who wrote, who created, and who are in the seats of power to establish the environment in which our kids currently attend school.
Is there anybody
So-
else who hasn't spoken who would like to?
So if you're saying that that could relate to anything, but 50% of people might come in and relate it only to a pro-choice argument, then that's offensive enough to have it removed from the class, in my opinion. So I don't know any of the people you're talking about. And every woman has every right that a man does in today's society. So if it's relevant in the classroom, then we're talking about abortion rights, which again, could offend or disrupt someone's classroom experience, and that should be removed.
The Constitution of the United States does not provide for equal litigation, legislation, equality for women. It just doesn't. No. This is one of the conversations that are healthy. I don't want to derail this, but
What rights are you talking, what right doesn't a woman have that a man has today?
Okay, we're getting off
I'm
topic
not,
here,
I'm
I
just
think.
saying there are different perspectives, and to say that is just, I'm not gonna let that false piece of information.
Is there an example you have that a woman doesn't have today? That a man has?
I
that
want to
she
ask
can't
for a
do?
motion at this point to move this policy forward for a first read. Motion. Okay. Let's move on to the next part of the agenda.
We'll move to special education and student services. You will see 3 items for a motion for approval. First item is the agreement, the intergovernmental agreement for services with CLIU 21. This is an annual agreement that's typically approved by the board. Item number 2 is special education legal services agreement. That is an approval for special education council with an agreement with Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams. And the third item is a student waiver agreement, seeking agreement for a senior who petitioned to complete graduation requirements per school board policy 200, taking classes via Spartan Academy. So
We need a motion.
We're having a real hard time hearing, I'm sorry.
Can somebody please close the outside door, because I think there's a lot of outside noise.
Thank you.
That might help. And we'll ask everybody to speak right into the microphone, okay? We need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Okay, Mr. Guppy?
Thank you. Is that any better?
No.
You have to play with the board.
Turn it on.
How about that?
That's perfect.
Okay, so business and finance, we have 3 items on the agenda. The first is Community Baptist Church Stipulation Settlement Agreement. We've come to a successful conclusion on that matter, and we have it before the board tonight. I'm also happy to report that we are up to date with our treasurer's report and investment report. January's was completed and on the agenda for approval tonight. And the bills list is not as exciting as the discussion tonight. We have approximately $1.1 million of bills. A couple of notable standouts, again, Brandywine Transportation, $237,000 was actually for our winter sports, including everything from basketball, swim, and rifle. Carbon Lehigh IU, $82,000. That's actually a breakout of internet services for $7,455. Network integration fee of $16,200. It's a network management fee, I should say. And also special education costs of $58,418. In addition, happy to see we already have graduation supplies. That was under Elliott Printing Services for $3,665. So we have something to look forward to this year, special graduation. Electric Supply Company, $4,994. That's made up of various invoices, actually 8, and it's just basically supplies that have added up to the total. Same thing with Fuller Paper, that's maintenance supplies. Norman Bus Transportation, you'll see on there, student transportation, $118,000. OPTIV Security is for, again, technology that services Barracuda and Aruba, and that's to keep our network security in check. PAPCO, $23,000. Again, that's diesel fuel, which we get off the county cooperative bid, and that's currently at $2.91 per gallon. So I wish I could fill up there. Let's see, Riverside Insights, $1,000. That's a comprehensive assessment program, Woodcock Johnson Special Ed. And school district insurance, $68,995. That's a breakdown composite of workers' comp from June through December. And I think that's really the highlights, unless there's any questions on the bills list.
There are a number of charter school payments throughout the bills list. And what might be helpful is how many students does that equate to in future bills payments? At some point, we should probably revisit the expenditure of charter schools in total. How many students are impacted by that, what the average cost per student are, and if there's any likelihood with some of those that, I mean, some of the charter schools, like the Charter School for the Arts and things like that, I think are very beneficial and offer students alternatives to a traditional public education. There are others like the cyber school and things that, what is our potential of re-recruiting those individuals, even if it's to our offering versus, a much more expensive and maybe not as beneficial an outcome for the student in terms of learning. So that's one question. The other question, there's a Verizon wireless bill that's over $4,000. Is that for cell phone contracts? And could we look at something like bring your own device and maybe give a stipend to individuals for their personal cell phone use with an app that would allow private, school district use in some way like many corporations do? Because that to me, I don't know how many phones that would equate to, but that's a hell of a family share plan.
Sure is.
Okay. To answer the first question, the tuition breakdowns are roughly 14,000 and change for a regular ed student in charter and 29,000 and change for special ed students. It's strictly breakdown from the state model that's applied to our particular district. As far as the total number of students, we will have that information as we're moving forward with the budget. And I absolutely agree that this is an area where we should be looking at trying to promote return to district.
Lou, would it be
Go ahead.
possible to get some historic data on that as well? Maybe, I don't know how easy that is for you, but looking at the trends over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it recently. I know when I actually.
You have it, okay.
Yeah, we do have it because I know when I interviewed, I had saw that there was a marked increase over the past 10 years. And I think when COVID started, the numbers really went up.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that's one of the big drivers. Hopefully we're seeing a big return this year now that we're back in person. As far as the Verizon bill, I think that the Verizon bill is for various cell phones throughout the district, whether it be in the maintenance department and or administrative, whatever the agreements are. I think that, the details of that will again be something that I'm looking into as I'm moving forward with the budget. I think currently that resides in technology, and I think I've already spoken about bringing that into the business office.
Okay, so can I get a motion for our business and finance settlement agreement, treasurer's report, and the bills list? Second. Any comments or questions?
I had an additional question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure whether Lou can answer this or not, probably maybe more the superintendent, and I'm sorry to take you off guard. Should have shot an email to you about it, but it came to mind with the bills list. Liberty Trails, I appreciate the communication you got out to us, to the board at least during the week. I'm not sure if that's been communicated to the community at large. That happens to be one of my pet projects. I really think that's a very valuable program that we offer kids. It was one I participated in Quakertown by the same name when I was a kid, and had fond memories of Hopewell Furnace and things like that in the summertime. So I did see there was a concern, and I don't know how much we want to talk about that or not talk about it. There was an issue with some funding, not our funding for it, but just the way it was being funded, is my understanding. And I'm less concerned about that, other than to ask, is this something that, it looks like we're not gonna be able to do it this year because we did approve it, I believe, earlier in the year. So I do think I would want to make sure the community is aware of that. And B, I would hope we could, and I know budgets are tight. I would hope we would continue to look to bring that back online in future years, because I do think it's a worthwhile. And perhaps we charge, there's different things you can look at it. I'm not saying that we don't look at it in that regard, but I certainly just want to voice before I forget about it and move on to something else at another meeting. I just wanted to ask the administration to look closely at that. I think it's a good program, and I'm hoping that we can find ways to fund in the future. And I do agree with what I learned about the funding of it seemed problematic and it needed to be addressed. So I don't have an issue with that.
Right. And what I would say is that we are not precluding the possibility. I'm sorry, we're not precluding the possibility of having Liberty Trails in the future. I do think that if it comes back, as we hope any program would, that it would have to be entirely self-funded because right now I think students pay upwards of $400, I think, to participate, and yet the district subsidizes the salaries of those who are there. And so, apart from just the necessity to put a halt to it this year, the question that I would raise is, as we are, for example, cutting back instructional aides because of the expiration of federal grants, are we taking district resources to support a program that may not really be as equally accessible to all district residents because of the fees that are related to it? Now, we have expanded another summer program to move it to two elementary schools instead of one, to focus on students who are in academic risk. So I would say that we can do it in the future, but the question that we'd all have to kind of wrestle with is the extent to which district funds in the very scarce environment would be utilized to support that activity when there are other challenges before us. So yes, we will find a way to have people reinvigorate this under certainly new and better internal controls, and then maybe also kind of reworked with respect to its funding.
I have a question about that. Since it was already board approved for this year, why can it not go forward this year and then revisit it going forward after that? Because I believe that some parents and teachers and whoever were already counting on it for this year because the board had already approved it for this year. I don't understand why we are halting it for this year.
Yeah. Well, first, it was my mistake in that I presented it to the board as a fully funded activity. And at the time, I believed that to be the case. So it was my error in bringing it to the board and presenting it as it was. And right now, we have to, and I wanted to approach the board and make you aware of the situation before we had the opportunity to talk to the individuals who are involved, because that would not have, this is a matter of protocol. And so we have spoken to the union and will be meeting with those who are involved with Liberty Trails in the very near future. My hope is as early as this week to better understand what preparations have gone into this, where we stand as far as its preparations, because it was true that in February 14th, we approved this to go forward.
What's the district responsible for? How much is the district responsible for?
Yeah, and the salaries, and I'm not sure exactly what that number is, but there are far more concerning structural issues that exist beyond just the paying of the salaries for this program.
But it's not something that we could go forward with this year and revisit it for next year. It's something that we just cannot do this year.
Well, I would never say we cannot do anything, right? We can always do it. But right now, given the uncertainty around the program, given the fact that there appears to be significant amount of funds related to the program outside of the district's control, we just have a lot of unraveling to do to get this program in a position where we can come to the board with confidence and say we're in a good spot. Because right now we clearly are not, as far as it stands. So I'm not going to say we can't. If the board had a strong desire to run the camp, we would. But at this point, I would recommend putting a pause on it for this year.
I have struggled to go forward this year. I know it's a very, very, very popular program, and that everybody that has done it, like Jeff's just said, is very it's a great program. And if there was a way to make it happen this year, I would hate to see it go away. That's just my opinion.
I agree with Kyle on that. I don't know whether the timing of all this is possible. We certainly don't want to offer a substandard experience either. I would ask, in all this talk about differences in the community, one of the challenges in I think our community is we have folks with a lot of resources and folks without so many resources. And so, I could see raising the prices, and for those that can afford that, they can afford it. But I, at the same time, would want to make sure that Liberty Trails doesn't become a program that only people with resources can afford. So I would hope that free and reduced lunch and other things that we would look at people's request to attend that type of programming if they have, demonstrated need, that they might be able to still participate. I think that would be important if we're going to raise costs to a level that's kind of prohibitive.
Oh,
And it's been
they
my
may already be
understanding.
there. I
Yeah.
think they already may be there. That's part of the problem.
Okay, at this point, let's,
And
let's,
it's
let's. let-
Just for the history. Okay, how's that? Just for the, thanks, just participate in this program historically, and I understand Dr. Mahan is explaining there are financial structures that are
That's right.
complicating that this
Okay,
year, but
all right.
Just for historical past.
We understand, Mr.
Quick-
Pepe.
Yeah, just to go back to the question you asked on the charter, I was able to check, we do have 143 students in 20 charter schools. As I stated, the tuitions are $14,470 for a regular student, $29,213 for a special ed student. And the breakup is, or the breakdown is 7 cyber charters and 13 of the 20 are brick and mortar. And in total, we're looking at $1 million, $1,002,271 of tuition.
Averages, some of the are higher, some are lower.
No, that's exact.
Oh, so every charter.
Yeah, regardless, correct. That's why I said it's a state figure.
All right, with respect to Liberty Trails, can I propose that we ask Mr. Mahan, Dr. Mahan, and Mr. Pepe to bring that back to the next workshop so we can talk about what their strategy is for this year and next year, okay? All right, at this point, and if there's no other comments or questions.
I
can
just
we-
had a quick one for the solicitor, just if that has to be voted on again, right? Then at that point, if it's disbanded or not,
Yes.
after we voted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is being brought up as a budget item right now.
Okay. Back to our vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Okay, we finally, we have our human resources report.
Human resources. Exciting. It is, we have 8 items tonight in the human resources section. The first section I want to point out is the substitutes for this year. We have 7 teacher substitutes coming tonight. We're working very diligently to get more substitutes to support the students and the staffs of all of our buildings. There's a second substitute item, and that's for next school year for 22-23. So I don't want to confuse anybody on that. The rest of the human resource section talks about extracurricular activities, athletic event workers, classified employee resignations, classified employee retirements, certified employee retirements, and homebound instruction. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of the human resource sections?
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any questions or comments?
My only comment would be that we have a number on the certified employee retirements. We have a number of individuals who have served, almost everyone here has served at least 20 years. So that I would just like to acknowledge those many years of service. And it's rare for a teacher to stay with the district, range of 19 to 29 years of the folks we have leaving us. And I wish you the best and thank you for for your service to our community, and just acknowledge that the tremendous dedication you've had to serve in over decades in our district, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaiman. Anybody else? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Do we have any additional speakers? Or, well, nope, I'm sorry, sorry. There's a page. Committee reports. Facilities? I think we already spoke about that earlier, unless you have anything to add, Mr. Maud.
I just wanted to bring up, I didn't know if I should do this on new business or not, but the athletic field and its construction during next year and having proper plans in place. We've talked about this. I just want to make sure that we have plans in place for the various athletic activities during next school year as it's ripped up and where that is. But
Yes, I know our athletic director and our high school administration, and I'm not sure if the middle school's been involved or not, but they've all been reaching out. They're putting together places. So I'm not sure exactly where we are, but that's well underway, and we fully expect to have places on the road, but places for our athletes to play in the spring. Yes, all things will be covered. Now, I'm not saying it'll be flawless or without its inconveniences, but we'll have places for people to go.
I had, the CLIU had a meeting and I have a report on that. Not a committee, but an external report. At the IU meeting, I'd like to just announce to everyone that the IU has a fundraising effort for its Special Needs Children's Foundation, and they're having a golf tournament on Tuesday, June 21st at Old Homestead Golf Club. It's a great event. Kids make objects and prizes and different golf holes and flags for that event. I neglected to bring the pamphlet tonight, but if anyone is interested, all are welcome. All golfers or non-golfers are welcome in the tournament. It's for a great cause. And shoot me an email if anyone at all would like to register for that fundraiser for the IU Special Needs Children's Foundation. Also, with regard to the IU Special Needs Children Foundation, which does things, for instance, in the past, like purchase adaptive bikes for special needs kids. It's one of the projects they've done in the past. It's been incredibly successful because otherwise those kids would not have a bike to ride. And that's a great way to access the community and put a smile on a kid's face who wouldn't otherwise have it. Jen's House is a nonprofit organization that was created in 1991 because of a bus accident in Salisbury, killed one of its band twirling students tragically. And her family, the Dillmans, created this nonprofit to, I don't know if you've seen the Jen House signs near hospital facilities to help families whose children and whose family members are in hospital stays. But regardless, the Dillmans Mr. Dillman needed to dissolve that nonprofit because they are getting up in years. And it was decided that their board of directors decided to disperse the funds in the amount of $25,000. That's the full amount of all funds left to the CLIU Special Needs Children's Foundation. That sounds like a lot of money, but that's probably maybe 8 adaptive bikes, so it goes a long way, but we were happy to report that. And again, if you want to sign up for the golf tournament, please do so to benefit the same nonprofit. There was a resolution of respect and appreciation I would just like to mention for those in the community. Dr. Frank Ferrari led the IU from 2000 to 2006 as its executive director, and he passed away March 2nd. So there was a resolution of respect at the meeting and acknowledgement of his service, and he will be missed in this community. There was also a presentation about non-public schools department services by Mary Alice Grogan. And she talked about the private non-public schools that received support services that to best meet the needs of faith-based programs such as counseling, social work, reading, math, speech, language. Also Title I, federal contributors from local destriicts to meet those schools, non-public schools needs, and a presentation about how the IU provides through our home school district those funds and acts as a resource to distribute. So it takes the burden off of the individual school districts, and the IU does their business office handles that. So we are in appreciation for that tremendous work, especially with all the grants and ESSER funding that has been released in recent years. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes. Oh, and I guess oh no, I have two more things. One is there's a facilities plan. It's not a facilities plan as necessarily is considered by our school district. This is regarding a formula to provide classroom space as a fair share among districts so that IU classrooms in different districts. It's just a plan for how those classrooms will appear in different districts. And that is currently being decided with basically a status quo of the classrooms and shifting of resources. There will be one additional classroom added, but two different districts are negotiating where that will land. We're not sure yet. There was audit report was presented. It was a clean report, a clean, unmodified audit report with no material misstatements and no difficulties with the administration. And last, the CLIU's health and safety plan on March 5th, their safety plan indicated that they went mask optional at the IU Center in IU Center-based programs. Now, there are classrooms in other districts that went mask optional sooner, depending on what those districts' local rules were, or the IU will follow those rules, but the IU itself and their base programs went mask optional March 5th. And I believe that concludes my report for the IU in its most recent board meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaiman.
LCTI, quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Go
all
ahead.
right. I guess first bit of news is that Dr. Tim Rushton is retiring or leaving the tech school. So they are in the process of recruiting. And also the assistant to the director, Rosemary Weigman, is retiring. So there's some changes happening there. The animal science program, which is a new program similar to the emerging medical professionals program, is in the process of recruiting for the fall first semester. It's overbooked, and they are deciding on students this week, I believe. So there will be an announcement on which students will be able to take part in that competitive program at this point. And there are some other upgrades to various school classrooms that they're working on. I did take a tour. I still have two elementary schools here to tour yet, but I was at LCT. I took the tour. I've been there many times, but not recently. So it's impressive, and it's probably about 3,000 to 4,000 steps. If anyone's interested, it's a pretty big school. It's about the size of L-Tri-C, really, when you count it up. So 45 programs. I recommend people investigate. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. Okay, do we have any other business?
Just a thank you to the Spotlight for providing our newspaper. Thank you to Mrs. Gariello for putting them in our seats. I look forward to reading. I always look forward to this. Really much appreciated to the students who contributed to it.
Okay, any other new business? Okay.
I just wanted to thank the administration for the tours, and then also congratulate the musical. I went to see that. It was great. I would like to acknowledge all of the students, the stage hands, the pit orchestra, the teachers that were helping along with that and making it a great show, as well as the actors and actresses. And then, sorry, just one more thing. I believe I just lost my page here. Sorry about that. Went back too far. Good grief. Sorry about that. I know, I'm flipping through pages. I'm looking through all my pages. I was flipping through all the visitor comments and I went too far. So sorry about that. A lot of visitor comments to take notes. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mott. Appreciate it. Okay, any other new or other business? Okay, with that, we have some visitor comments. Amanda, you're gonna have to help me, Amanda. Say your last name, please.
By the time this is all done, you'll get it. Says you know.
Sajino. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I spoke last at the workshop, so I think you know I'm a parent in the district. I'm a minority. My family is blended, etc. I work with children and students of all diversity and ethnic backgrounds, as well as sexual orientations, etc. So this is all stuff that is near and dear to my heart, and I feel passionately about. I had full custody of a child who was in the district for 3 years. She was Black. She left the district because she did not feel safe here. We had to put her in a different school. So I hear you talking about how inconvenient it is to have to send your kids to private school based off of them not feeling comfortable in their classrooms. This is not a new problem. She's now graduated from high school, so this was a long time ago, 8 years ago, which is crazy. But you know, I really think that, as I said last time, we need to, if you haven't already, please take some time to look at the PA Department of Ed culturally responsive competencies. Educate yourself. Diversity is not a political statement. It is not politically aligned. It is human existence. It is here. It is taxpayer dollars. And it is important. I think it's really interesting that some of us have been called by some people in the district crybabies for asking for diversity and equality. And yet, when there was a diversity survey done, it was thrown out for maybe valid reasons. But what is the plan to address the issues that just came up from 3/4 of your audience tonight? This district has a problem, and it is your responsibility to look into it. And I really hope that's on the agenda going forward.
Thank you for an opportunity to address the board. I just want to say it's a real valuable thing that we live in a free and open society where we can even do this. If you go 5,000 miles to the east, people are dying because they can't and they want to. So thank you to the board for being supportive of a pluralistic society. I'm a parent in the district. My son graduated in 2020, and I have a 12-year-old in middle school. I'm a former teacher, secondary. I'm also a registered and certified SAP student assistance trainer. I directed project care for 4 years before becoming a rehab therapist. So I ran trainings and I trained a lot of your staff on student assistance, how to spot children that were having trouble in schools, to remove barriers that were getting in the way of their education. You know, I grew up during a lot of movements, the Vietnam War, the gay rights movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, Watergate, to name a few. And I remember a lot of signs in the schools, and I don't know how we managed to deal with it, but we did. We talked things out, we debated. We learned how to attack problems with facts and back them up without attacking each other. So someone earlier said that, you know, we need to keep the divisiveness out of the school. It's just a reflection of our community. We're not talking to each other, we're not listening to each other anymore. And when I was in 9th grade, our social studies teacher had us study Asian countries, and one of the students was given communist China. And the teacher had us put flags up of those countries. And sure enough, the next day we came in and there was a big gap right in the middle where that sign had been taken down because one parent thought that that was promoting communism. And so I wonder what the board's going to do to help these kids talk about real issues that they're seeing in social media, on the news, watching their parents and their community members beat the shit out of each other. Excuse my mouth. Some of you guys have been integrally responsible for raising my kids. I have coaches sitting here. This gentleman was my son's help with my son's scouting. We have coaches back here. We are a community. I may not agree with some of you, but you might change my oil or paint my house. And I'm a rehab therapist. I might take care of your parents someday. We need each other. We need to show these kids that we're working together on their behalf and not ripping each other down because we ascribe certain values to them just because of something they might believe in, because they believe that they're this kind of person. I can't say that about you, nor can you say that about me. So what are we going to do to teach these kids that this is a pluralistic society and that they're going to be someday adults who have to promote that and cultivate that? Do we teach them how to debate? Do we teach them how to argue constructively and to value the person even though they might not agree with them? Folks, we live in the United States of America, okay? Do you really think that one person's opinion is going to get forced down everybody's throats? Not if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a democracy. The kids need to see that reflected in the school. They need to see that the democracy that we talk about out there is reflected in the way things are conducted in the school. So I implore the board, thank you, to keep going. And whether you do a policy or not, I'm sure that will work out. But in the meantime, teach the kids how to disagree, how to talk, how to hold their opinions. Thank you.
Ally, did I say your name correctly? Okay. Just to remind the audience and the public commenters that you need to address your comments directly to the board.
Like I said, my name is Ali Lamon, and I'm a senior here at the high school. I'm a part of the marching band, concert band, pit orchestra for the play. I'm the president of Junior State of America and the founder and president of the Ecology Club. A lot of my initial points that I wanted to talk about have already been said by my friends and other community members, but I did want to bring up the one part of the proposal tonight. The policy says, in quotations, initial determinations regarding the display and or removal of said items, as well as compliance with this policy and all other board policies shall be made by the building principal. I know that this was discussed already, but I wanted to once again point out the vague wording. In this draft, it doesn't give our building principals enough to be able to enforce this policy, even if it is put in place. It is asking an employee to use personal opinions to determine whether or not a sign should be up in a classroom. And isn't this what the policy wanted to prevent in the first place? I'm a student who has not yet received higher education, and even I can see the logical fallacies of this policy. And as I said before, I'm the president of Junior State of America here at the high school. It's a bipartisan club where members of all walks of life can come together during Spartan period. The club has members from 14 to 18 and a whole range of political views. We talk about difficult topics in a civil manner, and I'm really proud to say that my conversational skills have really improved since joining the club sophomore year. We can agree and disagree like all of the adults say that we should without the interference of adult opinion. Students enjoy having difficult conversations because it makes us better humans, and it's prepared us for a world where not everyone comes from the same place and don't have the same political opinions. We cannot just shelter our kids because it makes us feel uncomfortable on either side of the spectrum. I also want to talk once again about the policy and reading in between the lines of it. It's aiming to limit the freedom of expression and thought of our teachers. Our public school teachers already have limits on their freedom of speech, and this policy would be taking away even more of their constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has already ruled on students' rights and teachers' rights in the classroom, and there are already laws and court cases that have happened that rule on freedom of speech in school. I'm asking for the school board not to play Supreme Court, and I'm asking them to not take a step in the wrong direction for the future of the school. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jimmy Durham. I'm a senior, actively involved in the school, member of teen counseling. I'm a part of National Honor Society, was captain of the football team. Business Leaders of America as another one. Friends with a lot of the students in the school and the teachers and the administration. And I wasn't planning on talking tonight, but it just hurt me so much to hear the negative things that have happened in our school. And I just wanted to shed light on so many of the positive things that have happened. I came to the district similar to my brother as a freshman and knew no one, but now I feel like I belong in the school, not because of signs in the classroom or anything like that, but because of the people in the district. because of the teachers in the district, because of the administration, because of parents, because of the students. The Southern Lehigh community has made me feel like I am a part of something bigger than myself, not because of anything but the people involved. And to the people who have had such negative experiences and have shared that tonight, I'm sorry. That is a horrible thing to have anyone slander another human being because of race, gender, sexuality, whatever the case. I would hope that any decent student teacher would stand up for something like that when they see it in the school. I know I certainly would. I just wanted to share that we're not a perfect school, but I believe we're a great school. When Mrs. Gariello sends out an email to the school on the bottom with her name, phone number, principal, on the left it says #2 best school in the Lehigh Valley. And I think that is a testament to the people in this room, to her, to the teachers. Heck, two of my favorite teachers are sitting in the back of the room right now, Mr. Rebo, Ms. Boucher. And just to touch as well on Mr. Lysette, you said earlier, I think students and teachers need to have dialogue. Important dialogue, not screaming matches, conversations. And I think I can speak firsthand that I've had those conversations about difficult topics with my teachers and have come out better because of that. I want to just say there is no district that I would rather be a part of. There's no school I would rather go to. There's no teachers I would rather have. And there's no principal I'd rather have than the ones here in this district. Thank you.
Thank you for those who want. #2 is a temporary standing right now. Just so be clear, great work. #2 is temporary.
Elise Paul Huber.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am a parent in the district. I have a graduated 2020 girl in Temple and a son who is a junior at the high school. I'm also a 25-year veteran teacher in a different district, so I am not your employee. But I can honestly tell you that it would really frustrate me from a teacher's point of view to have you policed by how you decorate. I decorate 3 different classrooms in my district. I'm a traveling teacher, and I'm here to tell you it's a rainbow. The posters were made by me. They have a rainbow theme to them. They have no meaning other than to add color to my space. I teach computer class. But if you're going to create a policy that polices what I display in my room as a positive note and a teaching opportunity for my students, I don't understand where that comes from. I have, just to give you a background, I have 2 master's degrees. I have 3 certifications. I am a qualified, highly educated professional. And I would never do anything to harm my students in any way except to give them a positive experience. But when you're saying that we don't have the space to do that anymore, I wonder where that comes from. And how is it that one person's complaint becomes a policy? Thanks.
There's nothing that I can say to add to what my son said and these kids here tonight. You can probably hear me well enough. You can start the timer. We need student dialogue. We don't need teachers preaching to kids. We need student dialogue. We need to encourage student voices and dissenting opinions. And I hope that's going to be what is promoted in the school district. Thank you.
Tim Carney.
Thank you. Just a couple of topics. Tim Curry. The signs, I always felt that you could dislike the sign and also at the same time dislike the policy. So I'm pleased with the discussion and all the comments. Speaking about charters, spoke to Pat Brown over the weekend. I thanked him. I said, keep in mind funding for Southern Lehigh and Allentown. I taught in Allentown, got to throw them in. There was a charter reform independent regulatory review passed this, and you can be for or against charters, but it did help, but it might help because it requires school districts and charter schools to follow the same financial management and auditing standards. So that was some good news if we're trying to keep money in the district. Musical, amen to that. I hope Mrs. Gaiman, your son finds a date. It was a song that he sang. And it's important in education, we talk about STEM, but sometimes we add that A and make it STEAM to include the arts. So the more that you do to promote the arts, support the arts all you can. And the last thing, I talked to the robotics. My daughter is a communications person. They went 3-1 this weekend. Out of 128 teams, they are 10th. And that includes Mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. They have a huge tournament, important tournament at Lehigh, April 7th to the 10th. That will determine if they make worlds. I don't know who's invited, but I encourage, if you show up for the basketball games, show up to this. And show up to the musical, show up to this. It's really neat. They had a created robot that can climb and shoot hoops. There was some controversy. There was a review for one of them. And I asked the coach, what do you want me to tell the board? Because I said, I'm going to bring them up and promote them. He said, tell them, thank you for the support that you give them. Because there's only 4 teams in the valley that do this. This was a rare opportunity for my daughter. So thank you again.
I have a quick comment about the robotics. In years past, the robotics team has actually come to a board meeting and given a demonstration of their robot. And it's been really cool to see what they've done. And they come and they have it do tricks and stuff for us. I'd love to see that.
Okay, folks. With that, we're adjourned at 8:57. Thank you, everybody.